Welcome back to Sanctuary. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, be sure to do so. If not, this is about where we left off on our cul-de-sac sanctuary project here. Mostly got the structures and layout put together as well as the junk fencing around the settlement. The first thing I'll share is off camera I did put in some sort of power grid. I just used some vanilla power connectors as well as some scrappy ones that I found on CVC just to bring some wiring across. I just used it along the fence and connected all the houses. That way I have a solid power grid put together now. As I mentioned in my last video, the main thing I wanted to get done in part 2 was some much needed roof repair. So that is what we're going to get started on now. Overall, this was a really simple process. I just used a combination of some different roof pieces from the warehouse and barn sets, some walls, and some patchwork pieces from CVC. The goal here was just to fill in any of this obviously open and dead space up front here. This roof was not as bad as some of the other ones particularly, so I mostly just focused on these front areas. This was really just a game of mixing and matching different pieces until I was happy with it. Luckily, going with the kind of junky theme, there was plenty of options to choose from. Here is the finished product of at least the front of this first house. The top of this roof on this building wasn't bad, but I did want to pay attention to the ceiling up here. So for that, I just threw in some barn floors, made sure I lined them up perfectly even with the corner of the house here. And then from there, it was pretty easy just to kind of snap the rest of the house in and fill in any other blanks. This at least covers those missing ceiling tiles and gives me a little bit of rain coverage, hopefully. For this next building, the top of the roof in particular was in way worse of shape. So for that, I started here with just some warehouse and barn roofs and just kind of lined them up along because they matched the slope and filled in the whole top of the house. I honestly thought I was going to have a lot harder time fixing these parts of the roofs at least, but fortunately these were a really good fit and I got lucky. After I finished up this part of the roof, it was time to move on to those kind of front sections like I did in the last house. And this whole process was really just wash, rinse, repeat. I filled in any holes in the walls and as well as the floors in those ceilings like I did with the last one. And with the magic of editing, here are these next two houses completed as well. We are definitely looking in much better shape than we started out with. For this one specifically, I did just use all warehouse pieces for the roofs, that way it would match this utility building next door. Continuing on to some more structure repair, the next thing I'm focusing on is just repairing some of the walls of these buildings because they are also in terrible shape. This was even easier than the roofs. I just kind of filled in any holes in the walls with some scrappy wood pieces. For the windows, I actually covered them using these chain link fence pieces I found in CVC. I normally use wire fencing or something to cover windows, but I really like the texture of how these looked, and they fit in really well. Obviously then, I just moved down the line and continued filling the walls for all of the rest of the buildings. For some of the longer windows, the chain link fence wouldn't stretch the whole way along the bottom, so I just used the chain link on top and then some wire mesh from CVC to cover the bottom. It was close enough, and if it works, it works. It looks great. This front house I plan on being a general store. So I want the store up front, and then I kind of want to separate this back living space to be more like an apartment of sorts. So I squeezed in this CVC door just right here along the hallway and covered that entrance to the bathroom just to separate this whole side of the house to be kind of like a living space. With this plan, I now have plenty of room for a bedroom on this side and then probably even kitchen, dining, living room, whatever, along this side. I think it's a cute idea and gives me kind of room to play around with like some living areas and some functional areas as well. The plan for this blue building is actually like a Minuteman headquarters, a recruitment area. So this main kind of space is going to be like offices or displays. We'll have like maybe a kitchen break room in this bathroom, an armory in this small room over here, and then Preston can have his kind of own apartment or living space in the bedroom behind us. A plan I have with this build, and maybe more in the series, is no indoor restrooms. I feel like it's more realistic to have kind of like outdoor bathhouses and stuff, so that's the goal here. You'll see no bathrooms on the inside. For this building, I did end up covering most of the windows because we will have some kind of protectable stuff in here, so we want to keep a lot of it covered, especially like the armory room and stuff like that. This last building was the easiest, and I did end up just using warehouse pieces again. I really want it to look like it's part of that utility building next door. And I think Sturgis is going to end up living here because he is kind of like the maintenance man, utility guy, whatever. I think he'll enjoy this house. Next up on our list is some defense structures. Right up front where the workbench is, I put in like a defense tower using an elevator. Shazo does this in a lot of his builds a lot, and I think it's so smart to use the elevator for this kind of premise. So you use the elevator and a lot of the wall pieces and stuff just snap right onto it. So this was just a long process of like mixing and matching different defense pieces and shack pieces. And I'm not gonna lie, I went a little bit mad putting this together. I tried a couple different defense posts before I just ended up with the basic vanilla one and slid it right in here. The walls took me forever. I used some railings to kind of cover the middle gaps between the two walls, and I just kind of like played around with it for 2 hours. It was ridiculous. Along the bottom here, I attempted using some picket fences as a railing for this side porch here. I felt like since I scrapped so many picket fences, I should use them somewhere in the build. And like I do plan on using them on the farm and stuff like that. But there was something about the combination of the woods here that I didn't really like. But I will open the question up to you. If you think it looked cool, I can always go back and change it. Let me know in the comments. Should I leave these shack railings or should I bring that picket fencing back? The part I struggled with the most on this building was the roof, and I left this clip specifically in just to see if you can notice the mistake that I made here. I found this prefab and I was like, oh wow, that roof is perfect. It sits right on top so nicely. I slapped it in, called it a day. Run to the comments now if you can spot my mistake. If not, we'll get back to it here in a second. At this point, I thought the main structure was done, so I went ahead and settled in some foundations and supports. I used some shack supports along this front out piece here, and then for along the side of it, just so it looked a little bit more supported, I used this concrete block from Snappy. And the reason I used this specific base is just so I could attach those like foundation edge pieces like I talked about in my last video along the side here. And those just snap right in on that concrete base. For powering the elevator, I found this engine piece in CVC that looked really cool and actually lined up perfectly with where you wire the elevator, so it almost looks like the engine itself is powering it. I thought it was a really fun idea, but unfortunately the 3 power that engine generated was not enough. So I just used this little fuse box from CVC just to add a little bit more power and a little more decoration too. It's a win-win. All that was left now was to test my brand new functioning guard tower. And remember that clip that I decided to leave in? Well, yeah, that prefab that I used, it had a floor. So obviously I can't get to the second floor of an elevator if there's a floor piece blocking my way. I felt so dumb in this moment. This is about where this building drove me absolutely mad. I did eventually find a replacement roof for it and put it together, but I did that off camera because it took me a minute, I'm not gonna lie. And there we have it, finally, a guard tower. It looks pretty good. I don't love the roof, but hey, if it works, it works. The engine looks super cool. I'm super proud of that idea. And the view you get from this guard post, I couldn't have done it any better, honestly. You have sight of the whole road. When I do landscaping, I'm going to make sure I don't block a lot of this view because it is the perfect scoping point for the settlement. The next thing I wanted to add up here was like a barracks for the guards to sleep. This was a lot simpler than that guard tower. I just threw down a basic foundation and then just added a bunch of wall pieces till I was happy with it. We're going to skip through most of it because it came together pretty quick and I was still reeling from the tower build. So this is the finished look. I like how we still have some kind of outcroppings that are defensive and they can still look out and use as guard posts. And then we have some like room for some beds and stuff as well. Very simple idea. I think it looks pretty good. The last thing we're going to work on for this video is I'm going to return to that kind of bathhouse idea. I wanted to focus on the more like water utility of things before I moved on too far. I designed these off screen and then I just kind of wanted to put them together on video. These are going to be copied and pasted like the same structure for the bathhouses. So I just wanted to show you me putting them together before I scattered them around the settlement. It started with this metal shack and then I just added some different water utility pieces along the sides as well as some extra water clutter. We'll assume these barrels are like backup water for the tank. I added some like pipes and different wall greaves just to make it look like an actual functioning structure. Like this vent and pipe work back here honestly add a lot. Then of course we just needed some showers, stall doors, and other kind of decoration. This was kind of just a base concept or format of these buildings that I wanted to put together first before I started scattering them around the settlement. That way they all kind of look the same. I do end up making a couple small changes and workings around with it. Like I noticed one thing is I needed like drains for the bottom because obviously we're not going to just shower onto wood flooring. So that was one thing I ended up adding soon. But I was happy with this kind of like beta version of this building. The next thing I wanted to add was some larger water storage. I figured the best place for this was by the farm. So I found this cool CVC water silo that I added right here next to this barn building. I then added this powered water pump just to make it look a little bit more functional. The icing on the cake here was definitely when I added this random pipe piece that I found. I used that just to connect the pump to the silo, that way it looked like it was feeding directly into it, and I think it looks so cool and functional, and I'm happy with this area so far. I might tweak it a little bit once I get to the farm. Speaking of making adjustments, I added the first of the bathhouses between the kind of Minutemen building and the clinic building over here. I added another extra pipe, that way it looked like the tank was leading right into the building. I found these roof vents that made perfect like drainage, and then I did end up changing the shower heads as well. As much as I love the eye wash stations, this was just a better fit for the shack in general, and I think it looks pretty cool. We now have some showers, so next all we need is some toilets. I went with just some basic outhouses. We're not going too crazy. I don't love the idea of like functional plumbing post-apocalypse, so they're getting some outhouses and that'll do. This area looks great as a little like kind of restroom area, and I scattered a couple more of these around the settlement as well. For example, I added like one single bathhouse piece over by the general store over here. We got some restrooms along the other side at the entrance, and then by the guard barracks back here I even added just like a single restroom and bathhouse for them as well. Looks super cool in uniform, and I'm really happy with how this idea came out. Now, I'm sure you might be wondering, Wilma, what about this last house over here at the end? You haven't done any roofs or repair at all to it yet. Well, I'm actually saving this one for the next part. I plan on this being the kind of like apartments or hostel building. So the reason I haven't touched the roof is I'm probably going to scrap it and build up. But for now, I think that's all I have for you for this part. Thank you so much for the positive feedback and all the views on this series so far. I mean, I expected to get maybe a couple videos in and then start getting some good views and stuff, but part 1 did really well, and I'm so excited and motivated to keep this train running. I am aiming to have these videos out either every other Sunday, so keep an eye out. And in the meantime, check out my Twitch too. I did start streaming again there. You can check the link in the description for that. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.